Good day and welcome to Mental Health and You. I'm your host, Cynthia Timms, and I thank you for joining me on another episode of a show designed to break down the barriers of mental health and mental illness and trying to create, as we try to create, expand the mental wellness in our community. I stumbled a little bit, but that's okay because this is a hard month. We're going to talk about suicide. Suicide. You see, this is mental health prevention month. Suicide prevention month. Now, when I say that to you, what does that mean? Have you ever known anybody to die by suicide? How did it make you feel? We're not just talking about, yes, celebrities that you may hear when you never met. You may think you know them. The Robin Williams of the world, Phyllis Hyman, Donny Hathaway, but Anthony Bourdain. But suicide. It's a plague that's killing us, y'all. And I would be remiss in this suicide prevention month, to not share, to not open up my lines and open up this conversation. And helping me do that today is Azim Thomas. I welcome him again. He was a guest once before, but I felt compelled to bring him back. A fine photographer, but he too has a story. He too has a story like so many others. So, Mr. Thomas,
Thank you for having
Azim.
me, Mrs. Timms. And
Cynthia, please.
Thank you, Cynthia, for having me once again.
We're going to talk about suicide, but also why are we still here and the things that's kept us here in spite of so much. So,
Okay. Cynthia, before we met, I had just came home from the state penitentiary. I'm actually doing 7.5 to 15 years. Okay, I did 7.5 and I came home. I had to come home to a family that I've been away from for 7.5 years. I was scared to death because I've been away so long. When my wife used to come up to see me, and sometimes she was unable to make it, and then when I was able to see her, it seemed like a deprivation had came over me because it was the length of time since I seen her, because she wasn't able to come up there to see me on regular, time periods, and it felt like I was being estranged from her, and it really affected me because when I used to get conjugal visits in prison, and one time we had a conjugal visit, and being that I was institutionalized for such a long time, we used to cut up our meals and our onions and our green peppers and put them into our meals. We used to cut the top of the cans, and use that as a knife. So when I got on the conjugal visit, we had knives and forks. And
the top of the cans of
the
what
top
type
of
of
the
can?
yeah like cans of corn come in, canned corn, fish, and we used to take that and use it as a knife because they wouldn't give us no, knives, actual knives. So when I came home, when I went on the conjugal visit, and I started cutting up my food with the the ends of the can. So when I came home, I did the same thing. And my wife said, "Baby, you home now. You're not in prison no more." And it blew my mind, and I started crying, you know, because of the effect that prison had on me. And then it was hard for me to get a job, and you know, and it was hard because I didn't have no papers, and I had to take care of my family, and the pressure started mounting. And when the pressure started mounting, you know, things started getting real dark, and I felt that I was all by myself, and I was going through a very painful period because I used to actually run across the street when I came home from prison because in prison you don't have no cars and you don't have no vehicles and you don't have no streets and you have none of that. And when you come home, it's like when you hear them horns and them sirens and stuff like that, when you haven't heard them in years, it affects your psyche and it messes you up mentally, okay? And
Did you ever try anything in prison as far as trying to harm yourself, considering what you were going through, what you were feeling, being away from your family?
yes, but it's like when I first got incarcerated, it was like a dark shadow that would come over me, a real dark shadow. And it had a thing in it saying, you have to stay here, you have to stay here, you have to be here, you understand? You can't go home, you can't, you're locked up, you gotta stay here. And it was something inside of my spirit telling me, I want out, I gotta get out of here, please let me out. I said, no, you gotta stay here, you gotta stay here. And that dark cloud came over, and it makes you wanna go ballistic. It makes you want to just break out. But I know I had to keep myself intact because if not, I was going to lose it. So what I had to do is I had to hold on, and I had to, you know, the faith in, I believe in my Creator, you understand, that kind of brought me through. The faith that I had in my Creator brought me through.
That you saw in other people, that faith that kept you going.
Yes, it was a gentleman. I was locked up on the 10th floor in the Brooklyn House of Detention. And it was a gentleman on that floor with us. And he had an episode. And what I mean by episode, he tried to kill himself, so he cut his wrist. And they took him out. And after he tried to cut his wrist, they got to him in time. They took him out. They took him to the infirmary, you know. They wrapped up his wrist, you understand? And they brought him right back to the jail cell.
Did you know whether he got any help, any resources?
No, there was
therapy?
no.
Does any of that exist? Did it exist?
No, at the time that I went away, none of that, far as therapy and getting help for mental illness. No, that was unheard of in prison, and I think it's still unheard of in prison. There's a lot of inmates that are going through a lot of psychological and emotional problems, and they're not getting the help that they need.
So did all of these feelings, did they start in prison, or did it intensify in prison?
It intensified in prison because, see, when I was out, I can get relief. When I was feeling that pain inside of myself, you know, I would actually medicate. Okay, but in there I couldn't medicate. I had
talking about Medicaid, Azim. What we talking
Medicate.
Okay.
Talking about drugs.
Okay.
Okay.
I just wanted to keep
Okay.
it real,
All
you
right.
know.
Yeah.
I mean, you talking about drugs as in a Tylenol or
No,
Advil?
I'm talking
What we
about
talking
drugs
about?
as and alcohol. I'm talking about drugs, is it cocaine and heroin. You know,
Because you wanted to, why?
you want to escape. You want to end the pain. You want to end the suffering. You know, and that's why you medicate. It took me a long time to realize why I got into drugs, because I was in pain from child, you know, coming from a broken family, you know. My mother was an alcoholic. My father was an alcoholic. I started using alcohol. I started using drugs. But there was a pain there before I started all of that stuff. And that's why I went to using drugs, because I wanted to medicate and I wanted to alleviate the pain that I was feeling, me coming up and being, you know.
Wow.
So I went to drugs. And when I went to drugs, and after a while, you know, I did the whole drug deal, the street and getting high, and until I got incarcerated. Then I went away to prison. But in prison, I started dealing with my demons because I had no medication. I could not medicate, so I had to deal with my demons. And we all have demons. And we have to learn how to deal with our demons. And the greatest thing to learn how to deal with our demons is coming to a faith and belief in our Creator. You understand, to help us deal with the things that we have no control over, you know. And that's what got me, you know, when I came home from prison, and then I found the outlet, and this was my outlet. My outlet was photography. It allowed me to express myself, you know, physically.
And we're going to get
Okay.
back to that, because that's important. Because for the past 20 or so years, I think I've mentioned it on this show before, I've been a photographer too. So I know what photography has meant for me as an outlet. You know, I did not go to a physical prison like you, but in my mind, and if I can disclose, if I can be transparent, I was in a prison in my own mind, you know, of losing my parents at an early age, in my early 20s, you know, of losing an aunt, of having an aunt, but losing her recently, like 10 years ago. Every once in a while, I still feel adrift. So I understand what photography is meant, and we're going to talk more about that. But I want to get back, you know, as we talk and we have this conversation. You talked about, you know, just from a broken home.
Yeah.
Were you, I mean, can you talk more about that? And was there anything in your neighborhood? Did you have, like, yes, you talk about the medication, medicating yourself, but was there any friends? Was there any relatives somewhere that you can go? What about, you know? And did you notice this brokenness, I should say, in
Yeah.
other people around you, your colleagues, your friends, your neighbors?
I known it, the brokenness within my own family. Because at that time it was a lot of neglect, a lot of neglect, you know. As I was mentioned, my mother was an alcoholic, and we were kind of neglected,
Okay.
okay? And that induced the pain. That's when the pain started coming. Her not being there when we needed her for comfort. Sometimes she would leave us for long periods of time with other people.
Right.
And needing her. But you know, as I think about it, you know, in a retrospect, as I think about it, you know, I think about she must have had problems in her life. You know, I could look at it now, you know, with an understanding, and the mental issues of mental depression must have been going on in her life, because it was months. It was months when I didn't even see my mother. She would just go off, leave us with a cousin or somebody, and just go off for months. we haven't seen her for months, and then she would come back and she would pick us up. And I'm saying, you know, and as I look back at her, my mother had mental issues.
So a generational thing.
Yes, yes, you know.
A generational thing.
And I'm just learning how to understand it, because it emanates from our parents, and a lot of it emanates from the parents in the broken home system that a lot of us come out of.
Did you know anybody? I want to get. Did you know anybody who took their life? Did you? Was that like a taboo thing,
That
particularly in the black community?
Yeah. Not knowing no one that took their life, just straight up, but they took their life by using drugs. They OD'd and they died. Okay. I know people of that nature. You know, I know a lot of my friends died of overdoses. You know.
Wow.
You know.
You know, you say something. You know, you're sharing this. I thank you so much. It can't be easy.
Yeah.
But you know, I think about my life, where I came from, in my neighborhood, you know, in the South Bronx, and growing up with my parents, you know, and having a sister, you know, who was always in the middle of something, going through stuff. You know, my parents had her in boarding schools. My parents had her in rehab centers, you know. And she finally, my sister, my God, I love her and I miss her. She dropped dead at 51 years old. And I think about that because she left children behind, you know, who now lean on me. And I love my nieces and I love my nephews, and I embrace that. But I think about this issue, this mental health issue. And I know the day's topic is suicide, but sometimes I wonder with my sister, was it a slow death? You know?
I'm glad you mentioned
You know,
that.
was it, you know, she didn't know, she didn't put a gun to her head. You know? She didn't overdose. She could have. But was that just being a young girl out here, a young black girl, having a baby at 13 or 14 years old, giving in to peer pressure a lot, you know? And then coming up, coming down, going sideways, you know? And then dropping dead at 51. You know? So be that as it may, I mean,
Okay.
I think about that.
You mentioned something that's very powerful, and you mentioned slow suicide.
Yeah.
A lot of people just think of suicide as you just taking your life immediately. But it's something, what you mentioned is called slow suicide. And you eventually, I was on a slow suicide mission. I was taking my life bits and pieces, you know.
You're talking about the broken home.
Yes, I'm talking about the broken home. I'm talking about drug addiction, because that's a slow suicide.
Poverty, racism,
Slow suicide.
and how that impacts our lives in sort of ways we don't even realize at first.
Right. It's very subtle. It's very subtle, and then it creeps up on you. And when you look around, you wonder, how did I get here?
And how you're maintaining. What's going on with this? Talk about some of these coping skills that's kept you.
Yeah, my coping skills is
When did you get into it?
well, I got into late '96, early '97, when I started documenting our history. But I was eventually just going around to different events, and as I've
You can put it up to the camera. Let the people see.
Okay, this is one of the sisters, you know, Shut 'em Down rally on 125th Street for Malcolm X. Every year it goes around, you know, they go around and they shut the program, you know, the the community stores down in remembrance of Malcolm X Day.
And what did that mean to you? I mean, being able to, with that camera in your hand, that weapon of choice as Gordon Parks, what did that mean in your development? Being able to document. What did the camera mean? What type of coping skill was that for you?
It was a coping skill where it gave me some way of dealing with my depression and dealing with my sadness and being able to escape. It was also an escape mechanism where I was escaped, but it was a healthy escape.
Right, I was going to say that.
It was a very healthy escape. It wasn't detrimental to my life. And then I was able to convey messages to other people so they can deal with their problems in a productive and a meaningful way.
Wow. In a productive and meaningful way. Wow. That's important.
Yes, it is. It's very important because if not, could have been gone. I look at myself sometimes, Sister Cynthia. I'm blessed because all the people I came up, a lot of them are dead. A lot of them are dead, and even my younger brother, he died from AIDS. But the thing about it, I say, why them and not me?
I've said the same thing too, Azim.
Why,
Why them and not me? Why my sister and not me?
Because you have a mission.
But didn't they have a mission too? You don't think so?
Yes, they had a mission, but for some strange reason, God has a plan. And I guess it's us doing what we do now, helping other people, And
so what keeps you together? The photography, therapy, your family, your
my
friends?
Photography, therapy. I have a beautiful a sister by the name of Brenda Ricketts. Today's her birthday.
Okay. Happy birthday, Brenda, wherever you are.
Yeah. And I want to give her that shout out. And she keeps me alive. And I thank God that, I thank God for every day.
And that's important, those coping skills. On Mental Health and You, we talk about that. Yes, therapy, medication, that's important, y'all. If you got to do it, do it. But what else is in your life? You talk about family, you talk about your photography. I've talked on this show about, my sailing. I've talked on this show about peer support. And this is peer support. I think I would share with you. I shared with you earlier, and as we start to wrap up, I want to share because I want to call a name.
Okay.
I want to talk about my friend. It's been 2 years already when my friend Rosa took her life by suicide. And for the longest time, it took me a long time, and I still can't wrap my mind around it. I talked about, Azim, with you, how we used to go to church together. We used to sit in the park and talk and laugh, And I knew, there was a history of depression there. And I think that's one of the reasons why we were able to communicate, or at least find a kinship, because I had a history of depression. But in all my days, I never knew that, that she would end her life. It hurt me so bad. I start to wonder, something I could have done? Is it something that I miss? But then I said to me, what legacy? What legacy, what legacy can I show? How can I extend her name, her memory? I think this is what part of the show is about, extending her memory.
Yeah, and that's what you're actually doing right now, extending her memory by talking about her, by keeping her alive in your memories.
Yeah.
Understand? And by keeping yourself strong.
Well, that's what we do. We have no choice. I mean, we do have a choice, but I choose to live. I got more shows to do, y'all. You got more photographs to take.
Yes.
And guys, you folks, the National Suicide Prevention Line, I just want to share that with you before we start to wrap up. I want to thank the producers and the staff of Bronxnet. But the National Suicide Prevention Line, if you feel that you need to talk to somebody, 1-800-273-8255. 1-800-273-8255. Don't feel ashamed. You're not alone. You're not alone. But I also want you to know that there's hope out there. There's photography out there. There's people,
Yeah.
you know, and my goodness,
Yeah.
my goodness.
Each one teach one. Each one help one.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Brother Azim,
Good.
any what's going on? You got any events going on? You got a website?
I don't have a website, but I have an event going on at 215.
Well, look in that camera and
215 West 125th Street between 7th and 8th Avenue.
what's
and
the event? What day?
I don't have that locked down yet.
You don't have that locked down yet?
No, but for future reference,
Okay.
when you call me back, I will come and I will lock it down for you.
Okay, we'll
I'm
talk
trying to get
about that.
back.
Laughter is good for the soul. Again, I want to thank the producers and the directors of Mental Health and You. Y'all, there's help out there. You're not alone. Mental Health and You. So Cynthia Timms, Azim,
Thank you.
peace and light.